A group of surfers comes to a deserted island to ride the high waves. The friends have a great time and gather around a campfire in the evening. During these gatherings, the oldest surfer, Nilo, shares that he is in a relationship with a girl. Nilo now plans to quit surfing and move to Canada with his girlfriend. Everyone is happy for him, except for a guy named Álvaro. While everyone is having fun, a distraught Álvaro gets drunk and longingly watches his ex-girlfriend, Ona. The young couple recently broke up because of Álvaro's frequent arguments and cheating. That evening, she dances with another guy. Álvaro gets into a drunken fight with his rival and is rude to him. Soon Nilo takes Álvaro away from the dance floor. The friends chat about life. Nilo asks Álvaro to be honest about what is bothering him. Álvaro says that Nilo has ruined their plans together. After all, the friends would surf half the world and look for girls in the other half. Now Nilo thinks those plans are childish. He is in love with his girlfriend, and besides, they are about to have a baby. Nilo invites Álvaro to come to Canada occasionally, but he is not enthusiastic about the proposal. It turns out that Álvaro has already bought 2 tickets to a coastal city in Indonesia to go there with a friend to ride the waves. Now he presents tickets to Nilo and his girlfriend. This act touches Nilo, and the friends almost reconcile. But Álvaro still considers his friend's crush a betrayal. Afterward, Álvaro drives off alone in a car to the far side of the island. In the morning, he wakes up in his car with a terrible hangover. Several notifications arrive on his phone. Álvaro's sister informs him that it was her birthday yesterday, which he forgot about. Also, his father is seriously ill and misses him. But the family doesn't resent Álvaro. They are willing to wait patiently until he finds himself and wants to maintain a relationship with him. Meanwhile, he arrives at the most desolate part of the island. He takes his backpack and board with him and sets out to find a place to surf. Álvaro walks along the steep sandy shore and suddenly stumbles. He drops his board, and the loose sand takes him to a high, rocky cliff. Álvaro manages to hold on for a while with an incredible effort, but he can't climb back up because the sand will start to fall again. Álvaro digs his fingers into the sand but keeps sliding down the slope. At that moment, his phone rings in his backpack. Álvaro tries to reach for the phone to ask for help, but the sand takes him relentlessly to the edge of the cliff. He finds himself in a hopeless situation. He's hanging right over sharp rocks and shallow water, unable to move or save himself. Álvaro tries to figure out by ear when a big wave hits the rock so he can jump into the water without crashing. So he picks the right moment and jumps. He hits a rock hard in the water with his hip but swims up. He gets out on the rock, gets on his feet, takes a step, and immediately falls without feeling anything because he broke his hip when he hit the underwater rocks. After a while, he comes to his senses. In the second fall, he cuts his palm to the meat and breaks his head. His thigh is also covered in blood, but he can move his toes on his wounded leg. Álvaro takes his phone out of his backpack, but it's broken, and he can't turn it on. In desperation, he calls for help, but there's not a soul around for several kilometers. Álvaro wraps a t-shirt around his bleeding palm and decides what to do next. In his condition, it is almost impossible to swim to shore, but he has no choice. Álvaro slips into the water, overwhelmed by the pain. He tries to row with one arm and one leg, but he is exhausted and almost drowns. The internal bleeding causes his stomach to cramp up. He screams in pain and goes underwater. Álvaro no longer finds the strength to fight for life and gives up. He lets the air out of his lungs and slowly sinks to the depths. He mentally says goodbye to everyone and asks for forgiveness for his wrongdoings. At this point, he has a hallucination. Álvaro imagines that he was rescued and returns to shore with Ona. She says the guy she danced with at the bonfire party was just her gay friend. And Álvaro then humiliated her in front of everyone by starting a fight. But she also recalls good moments in their relationship. For example, how Álvaro once threw her a candlelight dinner on the far side of the island during a new moon. She had a crush on him then, but those feelings are gone now. Álvaro tells Ona that he is drowning and asks for her forgiveness. However, the boy cannot list what he has wronged his beloved. That's what the girl popped up in his mind for, to name all the unpleasant things she had to go through in their relationship. She talks about the boyfriend's constant cheating, the humiliation, and the lack of love on his part. In reality, Álvaro continues to sink and thinks about his fear of loneliness. He sees Ona again. She snuggles up to him and affectionately tells him they need to break up and start from scratch. Álvaro needs to apologize to many people, so he must live. With these words, she kisses him goodbye. In doing so, she gives him the strength to push himself off the seabed and continue to fight for life. Álvaro floats to the surface, and in his imagination, she walks away. He manages to make it to shore. He comes to his senses sitting in the shadow of a large rock. Flies land on his bleeding wounds, and there is no help waiting. Then Álvaro notices a piece of a surfboard being thrown onto the shore by the waves. He realizes he needs to get off the beach, and it's easier to do so by swimming. He crawls to the cliffs where the board washed up, but the surf gets worse. The wave picks him up and throws him headfirst onto the rocks. Álvaro faints again. He wakes up, drowning in the waves of the tide. He catches the strap of his backpack on a protruding rock and thus stays in place. A helicopter flies over him, but the pilot doesn't notice Álvaro from above. The tide subsides. Álvaro is frozen against a rock, holding onto his backpack. A seagull flies up to him and starts pecking meat out of his split palm. This brings him to his senses, and he crawls into the shadows. Along the way, a thrown fishhook is poked into his hand. This circumstance, the helplessness, the loss of blood, and dehydration finally drive the guy into despair. He loses consciousness again. Álvaro only wakes up at night and decides to quench his thirst. He digs a hole in the sand and covers the bottom with tinfoil that he has in his backpack. He pees in the hole but cannot drink the urine because there is too much blood in it. Overcome with pain, Álvaro rinses his unhealed wounds in salt water. Afterward, he wraps himself in foil, a fishing net found on the shore. He tries to keep warm this way since it is a cold night, and he has a fever. Álvaro hears thunder. Then it will soon rain, and he can quench his thirst. He puts his cup under the streams of water, but the rain quickly stops. He only manages to collect a few drops, which do not save him. All night long, he whispers to himself that he does not want to die. In the morning, a seagull approaches Álvaro again, but he is already armed with a stick and nails. He drives the seagull away and shouts curses in its wake. Just then, he hears his phone ringing somewhere nearby. Álvaro decides the phone has been thrown ashore, and it's working again. He digs his phone out of the sand and takes a video call from his parents. Álvaro tells them what happened to him and begs for help, but the parents talk about mundane things and don't notice that their son is in trouble. Then Álvaro realizes that this is another hallucination. He cries and tells his parents how much he loves them. The hallucination passes, and Álvaro again notices a wreck of a surfboard on the shore. Now the boy manages to get to it. Álvaro sees his surfer friends calling him to swim in the sea. It's as if he's on his feet and rushing to catch a wave. Álvaro realizes how beautiful his life was before this terrible accident, thinking about his friends and surfing. However, he continues to lie helplessly on the beach. He keeps repeating that he does not want to die as if it were a mantra. Álvaro tells the swooping seagulls that he is still alive. Then he thinks of Ona, pulls his will together, and decides to swim away on a piece of the plank with the rest of his might. Somewhere ahead, he spots a boat with people on it, but he can't tell if it's a mirage or not. Álvaro thinks of Ona and swims forward, but his strength fails him, and he drowns, losing his last hope of salvation. His last thoughts are only of Ona. Suddenly a boat passes over Álvaro. A scuba diver jumps out, swims up to Álvaro, and pulls him to the surface. A medallion slips from Álvaro's neck and goes to the bottom. Thus, part of the guy stays by this shore forever. A helicopter flies in for Álvaro. Medics immediately treat him. Later at the hospital, Álvaro is seen by Nilo. The boy, who was miraculously saved, tells his friend what helped him survive. Álvaro says he was afraid to die, burdened by a tremendous sense of guilt for everyone close to him. He didn't want to be someone's vile memory. Now Álvaro wishes he had been able to be happy for Nilo when he told him about his crush. Álvaro admits that at the time, he felt only envy. But now he is truly happy for his friend. Álvaro no longer wants to be completely selfish. He regretted not hugging his father for years and not telling him he loved him. Álvaro admits that he has never really fallen in love. The guy only likes Ona because she is objectively reasonable, but not for Álvaro. The guy decides to let go of Ona even though it hurts. The main thing Álvaro has learned is that he can be alone and survive. He ends his story with tears in his eyes. Time passes, and Álvaro visibly recovers in the hospital and decides to start a new life. At that moment, he is visited by Ona. This story is based on actual events. A surfer named Álvaro Vizcaíno once went missing for 2 days and, exhausted, was rescued in the sea 2 kilometers from the shore.